it me or is the screen on?
Hello? The regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District is now called to order. It is Monday, August 19th, 2019. The time is 5:15 p.m. And before we get started with roll call, if you'll silence your phones, and we now have a new system, so if you need to have a conversation, please step out in the hallway because otherwise you may get recorded. So if you will call the roll call now, Joanne, we'd appreciate it.
Commissioner Ernst.
Here.
Commissioner Engel.
Here.
Commissioner Rollins.
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsang.
Here.
Commissioner Wright. Here.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, are there any changes to the agenda, Commissioners? Hearing none, it's now time for public requests. If you'll step to the microphone and you may say your name and address, and we'd love to hear from you. Hello, Rick.
Hi. My name is Rick Hurd, 285 Northeast Spanish Court. I had 4 points that I just wanted to make today. The first one basically is that the district should build this golf course. Looking at the statutes, the district owns, acquires, develops, improves, and maintains park properties. And in your own, it's a 2015 special district planning document. The primary function of the district is to provide the larger, more regional facilities that go way beyond neighborhood type of parks. And this is obviously a very large project that is of interest to everyone in the greater Boca Raton and outside area. The second point is good parks don't come cheap. And I look back again in that document, when you built Patch Reef Park and finished in 1987, at a cost of $9 million. If we just use the consumer price index and bring that to today's dollars, it would have been $21.4 million, which happens to be very close to the same number as Boca National. Patch Reef is a great park, and Boca National will be too, but they don't come cheap. The next point is, the more I think about this, the more I think we should begin now with the property that the district owns, the east property, where you're unencumbered and you can proceed to build what will be, whatever we want to call it, Boca National Golf Park. That property will house a maintenance facility, which can be built now and sized appropriately for the entire facility later. It could have a temporary pro shop, could be a temporary trailer or something if we wanted to defer costs. We can build out the range and the learning center, the short course. In my opinion, the 11-hole course that Bryce Fazio's designed, I'd rather see a 9-hole course with some full-length holes, but that's my preference. And even allowing contingencies, the entire project could be done for, I think, significantly less than $10 million and be operational probably in a year. The numbers that are up there are the Bryce Fazio estimates with the asterisk and my own kind of guesses for the double asterisk. But I feel that they're pretty confident those numbers. And the last point is that I think no matter what happens, a millage increase is going to be needed. The city should provide the $65 million from the sale of Boca Municipal to relocate Boca's golf course. And even if they do agree to that, it won't be available in time. And your reserve funds are not enough to begin the project. So at least a temporary millage increase is needed, in my opinion. And I haven't had my own property tax records going back to 2002 in my house, so I pulled them all up, and you can see that the district has increased millage rates and decreased millage rates over time as needed. So people have been worried, like, oh, once it goes up, it'll never come back down, and you can show that that's not true. They will come back down. And I'm assuming this period in 2010 to 2012, when the DeHernley Park was financed at $13.9 million, that's probably the source of the increase there, which went back down. That's about a 10% increase over the current rate. So I say, let's go, let's get this thing done. I support the millage increase, whatever it takes to get moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Who else would like to speak? He's a hard act to follow.
I didn't bring slides.
Michelle Peel, 7391 Northeast 8th Court. I come in front of you in support of the millage rate as long as it also supports your existing properties that you need to take care of, like on Limbo. So I'm not going to go into details on that tonight. But what I do want to tell you is just an example of how important Gumbo Limbo is in our community. I don't know how many of you listen to WLRN, but they've been promoting a documentary called Troubled Waters, A Turtle's Tale. And that the world premiere is this week in Key West. Well, many of you may not know is that documentary features at least 3 people from our own Gumbo Limbo, several of which are in this room tonight. They're going to be rock stars in this documentary. It's an hour long. It features 3 Gumbo Limbo people in addition to Jeanette Weineken of FAU. There will be a premiere here in Boca. The date and location is being determined, but it'll probably be the end of September, early October. It is being narrated by Peter Coyote, and many of you may know that name, and Ted Danson is also a part of it, so it's a pretty major production. This is going to showcase the work in sea turtle conservation and rehabilitation that's being done right here in Boca Raton. They expect it to be picked up in other markets around the country after the premiere. It'll be premiered on television October 3rd on the public radio or the public TV station. So again, this is part of the fabric of our community, and Gumbo Limbo is more relevant than ever to the science and environmental education that we offer. So, thanks.
I've seen the trailer and it is amazing. And Whitney, I did recognize you. You're a star. Who else would like to speak? Hi, Tom.
Good afternoon, Tom Thayer, 4821 North Dixie. I really hadn't planned on speaking at all, but seeing as how nobody else wants to get up and talk, I'll go. So anyway, I'd like to second everything that Rick presented up here just a few minutes ago. It's come to my astute opinion that there's no getting along with the city council at this point. They're going to drag their feet. They're going to put up every hindrance they possibly can as far as developing the golf course. I like the idea that Rick proposed of doing the east side first. That'll be easier to do than the 18 holes. Let's get started. Let's bite the bullet on the millage increase, and let's get the shovel in the ground and get this thing going. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Who else would like to speak? Nobody else? Okay. Public requests are now closed. It's time for the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on August 5th, 2019. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It was seconded by Mr. Ernst. Any discussion, commissioners? All in favor of approving the minutes of August 5th, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. Okay, our regular business. Number 1, the interlocal agreement analysis. Mr. Horowitz, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, good evening. Very briefly, if I may, at your, I believe it was July meeting, the Commission's directed our office to pull copies of all of the interlocal agreements between the district and the city, provide a brief analysis as to the status of those agreements. What we did, there's a copy in your backup, is prepare a matrix which identifies the 10 current agreements, which includes the agreement between the city and the CRA, which is not technically between the district and the city, but we did include that in our analysis. There are 9 others: the Sugar Sand Park, Patrick Park, Swim and Racket, Ocean Breeze, which is the Boca National Golf Course, Red Reef, Countess de Hornley. There are 2 agreements that address beach renourishment. There's one for Ocean Strand, one for Don Estridge, and again, the agreement with the CRA. The matrix that we put together identifies the initial term of each agreement, along with the termination date of each. We looked for any early termination options, as well as the district's obligations in each agreement. Under the obligations column, just so you know, the district's obligations are fairly, they vary from document to document. Some of the agreements, some of the interlocal agreements have greater detail than others. We try to just provide a general brief overview, as some of the entries have more detail than others. But to the extent that the board would like any further clarification or further information on any one of the ILAs, we'd be happy to provide that. But the matrix that we did provide should give you a fairly complete and comprehensive snapshot of each of the interlocal agreements, when they initially were entered into, as well as the current term and early termination options to the extent that there is one. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Before we get started, I'd just like to weigh in on the Boca Raton CRA and our agreement. I met with Councilmember O'Rourke. She could not answer any of my questions, and Mr. Engel and I have a special group of people who we represent, and I'm concerned now that the obligation has, with the bond in Meisner Park has been fulfilled. What percentage of this $1.8 million, or is it $1.8 million now? $1.6 million, okay, is going to, could be forgiven or redirected so that the people who live in the district get the same privileges, possibly, as the people who live in the city. For instance, the tennis center. People who live in the district have to pay more than the people who live in the city. The library, the people who live in the district have to pay $150 toward a library card. We people who live in the district have to go out to Glades Road or Yamato or to any of the county libraries, which is fine, they're lovely libraries, but those same people are still paying their taxes toward the CRA. So I'd like to direct our council and our interim executive director to negotiate or speak to city staff to find out some answers to our questions. Commissioners, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, speaking as a co-representative of what is known as the reserve area, I think really we should look at terminating this agreement with the city. This was only supposed to be for, correct me if I'm wrong, only supposed to be for the Meisner Park bond issue.
Jacob, would you like to tell him about?
Sure, just very briefly, and there are a lot of moving parts, or a number of moving parts to the relationship between the district and the CRA. The district and the CRA in 1986 entered into an underlying interlocal agreement which provides for an increment funding obligation in accordance with Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes. It requires the districts to pay what's known as increment payments, which is a statutory calculation and methodology that determines the amount that the district is required to pay to the CRA. The 86 interlocal agreement provided a number of destinations for those funds, including future acquisition, planning, development, operation, maintenance of park and rec facilities, etc. In 1989, 3 years later, there was an amendment to that interlocal agreement. The amendment to the ILA provided an additional destination for the pledging of those funds by the CRA, specifically to the Meisner Park project, and to the debt obligations issued to finance the cost of that project. Interestingly, the Meisner Park project, quote unquote, is not defined in the 89 amendment to the ILA. Another interesting thing about this particular ILA, as well as some of our others, is there's not a termination provision. There's not a term, and there's not a termination provision. Now, there's something in the law which is called an illusory contract, the legal term. They're particularly in the context of public contracts, governmental contracts, and typically when you enter into a relationship, that relationship has some finality to it. Relationships aren't evergreen, as they say. They don't go on forever. They don't go on in perpetuity. We're doing some independent legal research, not only on the CRA ILA, but on all of the interlocal agreements in the context of their term or their lack of a termination option, to the extent that they don't have a specific provision to that point. But once the debt obligation for Meisner has been satisfied specifically to the CRA issue, there may be some other obligations that we're continuing to look into. I would not want to suggest it's simply as clear as the obligation has been satisfied and therefore the district has no longer has an obligation to make some form of payment.
Okay, so I stand corrected. But nonetheless, this has been going on now for close to 35 years, and the district has derived, whether in or out of the city, has derived no direct benefit. There's no money going to district projects, no money going from the city to district projects where the two bodies work together. There's no money going for, as Madam Chair brought up, toward subsidizing a library membership for reserve area residents. So it's kind of a one-way street. And, you know, if we're paying in this money, we'd like to see, I'm speaking for myself, I'd like to see a greater benefit than just paying in the money, and, well, you guys can do with it as you see fit.
May I offer just a brief response, Madam Chair? Just one comment. At the very least, while we know that the obligation on Meisner Park will be satisfied this year, I consider that a pivotal point in the context of this relationship. And again, at the very least, it would open up the door for some conversation either between our interim executive director and the city manager, or our office and the city attorney, to either redestine or recalculate some of those funds, or maybe better opportunities to use those resources in some other form or fashion. And with the board's permission and direction, we'd be happy to have that conversation with our counterparts of the city.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
What does the motion say?
What he said.
May I clarify?
Sure, I would just suggest that it would be direction to both our office as the general counsel's office and to our interim executive director to coordinate with our counterparts at the city manager, city attorney, to discuss the various both legal and operational options related to the CRA funding.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that is that I believe we'll be more successful if we deal attorney to attorney, because I think that's where we ended up last time with Ms. Frazier saying that, you know, we could not opt out of it. And I think that, you know, a fresh set of eyes on that in the conversation. So if it pleases the commission, I second the motion with the stipulation that we deal attorney to attorney.
I'm fine with that.
We're happy to have that conversation.
Any more comments? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Joanne. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other areas on the interlocal agreement that you'd like to discuss, Aaron?
None at this time.
Okay.
One other thing, just to clarify, on the Patriot Park agreement, reimbursement of the city, that's in conjunction, it's a 99-year lease that we have with the county. And does the agreement to reimburse the city for operation run in conjunction with that? In other words, as long as we have the agreement with the county, the city gets to operate and maintain, and we fund the city.
Jacob?
That, they do run hand in hand, is my recollection. I'd have to reconfirm that, but my initial recollection is they do run hand in hand to the term of the agreement.
That's my recommendations. I mean, recall as well, Steve, is that the ILA specifies that the city will maintain that property. Now, that brings us to another point of clarity, is that probably maybe 5-6 years ago, we talked to the city about privatizing the maintenance on that facility. I don't know whether you were on the board with that. And we found that it was less expensive for a private contractor to maintain it. The reason we did not go with a private contractor is because of the concern about the scheduling of those facilities with the city and the maintenance of the park with another contractor, and having concerns about overlapping times that would prevent the fields from being used because they were being maintained by the contractor. But it was something that the city did give us, the option to explore that, which we did.
I'd like to reopen that exploration if we could. Is it possible that with an outside management group that we could coordinate their maintenance schedule with a field usage schedule?
I will tell you from what I know about being involved with youth sports, it's a little more complicated than what you might think it is. I do think that we do have a better opportunity to try that with the swimming racket, where there is no sports that are being scheduled, and all the scheduling is handled here at the swimming racket for the tennis and swimming is all done locally. And I think this presents an excellent opportunity for us to try that. We have, I think our lease, ILA says we have to give the city 90 days notice. Well, we have close to 18 months or longer to where if we want to try to do that, we could put the city on notice that we would entertain that idea and move forward at some point in the future.
I like that. I'd like to find out more about that, and if that is a good starting point, in your opinion, I'm fine with that.
What happens to the people who have jobs here? For example, the tennis people, the lifeguards. Is there any stipulation we can have to hire them or keep them?
I thought we were talking about just maintenance.
Well, I don't know, I wasn't speaking just to maintenance, I was talking about the entire operation, and I know we'd have to determine what we're gonna do with the staff here, because I wouldn't want people who had been employed here since the beginning of the acquisition without a position. But it could be, similar to what we have with, Boca National. Because we'll probably, have a private contractor oversee that process, and we intend to bring some of the Boca Community staff forward.
Great.
I think it's kind of premature to talk about staffing or anything. I think personally for me, I think as a city, I would welcome the opportunity to demonstrate the value they add. So I think, anytime you go out to bid or look at things, it's good because you're looking at what you're getting and what you might get in the future. But the city is a key partner for the district, and the district is a key partner for the city. And, I'm concerned about taking on too many things at one time. So while I think there's a time and a place for it, I certainly would object to kind of, let's, start thinking about replacing staff and doing it. We got enough things to deal with right now, and the things I really want to prioritize is the golf course for funding and seeing how we're going to do that. Michelle Peels has got a concern about Gumbo Limbo and how we're going to fund that. I agree these are a part of the equation, but if we take that on right now, keep in mind we have a communication RFP going out, we have a banking RFP going out. To me, as we get through some of the components of the budget, the real opportunity is twofold. One of the opportunities is just how the programming is communicated. The Recreator was great 30 years ago, but I know from my personal experience at the Y, everyone wants to look online on their phone and they want to know when their class is and can they go to it. And so we need to, either the city needs to come up with those kind of services, or we need to get those kind of services out there. And then there's some capital things that need to be done jointly. And I would rather get that feedback both from the needs assessment and, more of a comprehensive thing to work together and kind of park it.
I agree, I'm glad.
Let me restate what Steve and I were talking about. Is we weren't talking about today or tomorrow. Our agreement with the city runs out in 2021. So it's not something that we would probably undertake in this fiscal year. But I think we need to float that idea out there and get us thinking about that possibility. When you look at the budget, and I was looking at it over the weekend, supervisory and technical costs going up, the administrative going up, there would be some savings for this, maybe de minimis with those costs, but if the city didn't have to administer those, we wouldn't be having to pay some supervisory and technical or some of the administrators. So to your point when we were talking about the millage rate, let's take a look at areas of the budget where we might trim so we don't have to go so much. And so that's pretty much my thinking. It's not necessary that we do this right now. And as you say, we don't need to talk about who's going to be still employed and so forth. It's an idea that I'd like to get out there, and at some point maybe toward the end of this fiscal year, we do take this matter seriously. You're right, we have a lot, we have a lot on our plate right now.
Yeah.
Brianne, put that on our schedule for, next summer, please, if you would. Bob, do you have any other comments?
I do.
Okay.
Regarding the schedule of the interlocal agreements, I was just wondering, Jake, the definition of enterprise fund, which is how the Boca Municipal Course and Red Reef Golf Course run now. And I'm not sure of the exact terminology, but I think it's supposed to be operating outside of the general revenue stream of the city.
Correct. For a specific purpose.
For a specific purpose. We have a golf course over at Red Reef Park that was not part of the original agreement that we had with the city regarding the operation and maintenance of Red Reef. I know, having spoken to some people who were involved with this at the time, that the city actually, an employee, I can mention his name because he's no longer in town, Joe Cockley, came to the district and asked if we would fund the shortfall of Red Reef Golf Course. So there's nothing you'll find in writing that obligates us to pay that, whatever that number is, $200,000, $250,000 to the city. And I think it's time that we considered whether we want to continue that or not. And I think that given the fact that, it's continues to run at a loss, and we're subsidizing that loss, I'm asking myself, why do we continue to do that?
I can answer the legal side of your question. I leave the policy decision to your colleagues, but in the context of the district's legal options, the Red Reef ILA is unique in that it's the only ILA that the district currently has with the city that can be terminated at any time by either party without cause. So to the extent that the district, as a matter of policy decision, wanted to extricate itself from that relationship, that is a legal option that's available.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we terminate the Red Reef ILA, but I am suggesting that we consider in our budgeting process, withdrawing the support for the Red Reef Golf Course.
That, again, that would be an option, and that could be a discussion that could be embraced in a subsequent amendment to the interlocal agreement.
Okay. Tossing that out there for a budget discussion.
What else do you have? I see notes.
I think that's about it. I mean, it's, the interesting thing going back through here, it brings back the discussion on the beach renourishment, where we, as a district, agreed to participate in 50% of the local share of the beach renourishment in return for other things that have not been developed, including the dredging of the Boca Raton Inlet, which we have responsibility for. I just want to remind everybody that, we did that voluntarily in the hopes that that would stimulate, an agreement in other areas. So that's all.
Thank you, Bob. Craig, we haven't heard much from you.
Well, I sent my questions to Sam and Jake earlier, so I don't know if they had an opportunity to look at that, but my questions were more around the structure of, when you describe costs, there's indirect and there are direct costs.
Right.
And it's really a question of, I think a lot of these agreements were written many, many years ago, and they're not defined. But
Yeah, well, I think your last comment really hits the nail on the head. I mean, there's not a definition in these agreements for direct or indirect costs. So we would need to look at the custom and practice, the scope in which the agreements have been implemented over the years to determine how those terms have been interpreted, because the history will matter in the context of what direct and indirect means. With regards to the capital project question that you had as well, that's a question both for the contracts as well as for the administrative side, for the operational side, that we'd be happy to look at with Brianne and Melissa and their team. And the third question with regards to going out to bid on operational issues, again, it would depend on the ILA, and there may be different answers for different parks. So we're continuing to look at that issue, but the answer is going to be different depending on which park we're talking about.
Do we need a motion to direct you to proceed with that?
If the general consensus is for us just to continue with our work on the ILAs as an entirety, based on this conversation, we're happy to continue with that research. Again, there are a lot of moving parts to these documents. I mean, this was a fairly robust exercise going through these ILAs, breaking them down one by one, determining the origins, the history, the district's obligations. If there are more questions as you all begin to digest and continue to digest what we put together, we're happy to look at that on a case-by-case basis. If there are specific questions, we're happy to answer those as well. So if the consensus of the board is for us to keep looking at these issues with no action being taken until some future moment, we're happy to continue down that path. So you wouldn't need a specific motion for us to keep with that process.
Okay, commissioners, are you in agreement? Aaron?
Yep.
Great.
In agreement, but let's manage our legal costs there.
We always do.
Thank you.
We always do.
I don't like open checks.
And we would never think of it that way.
To their credit, Sam reassured me this morning that he wasn't coming so that we wouldn't have double billing for the attorney's fees tonight. Bob, are you good with that?
I'm very good with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments about the interlocal agreements? Okay. We'll close that and we'll go to the second item on the regular business, which is the communication RFP. Leanne?
Commissioners, after our last meeting and the conversation over the scope of work, I've revised it. It's on page 11 of your agenda packets. You'll notice the first line is one of the biggest changes. The first line says, at a minimum, the proposer should be able to perform the required services, and then it goes through and lists. I did consolidate some of this and shorten it up. Other than this, we'll just have our regular front-end documents and submittal forms to complete the RFP package, if you guys are good with this scope as it is now.
Steve, since you had a problem last time, could we hear from you?
I'm very happy with the should rather than the shall. The body really doesn't change what we're looking for materially. So I'm fine with what Brianne did.
Good job, Leanne.
Yes, good job.
And I agree with, shortening the document was significant, and after the discussion we had at our last meeting, I'm happy that we got a summary document that covers what we're looking for, and compliment the executive director for the efforts in doing that. Were you making a motion, Steve?
I move that we put out a request for proposal for a communications consultant and/or a public relations consultant. Those two actually could be considered one and the same. So I don't know, do we need to mention both in the motion?
If the intention is to include them both, I would include both in the motion, yes.
Okay,
So
so,
for the record, it could be one response that would cover both communications and consulting, both components.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Aaron, you had a question?
Yeah, do we have any specific qualifications for this position?
As you go through these lines, these are the specific things that we expect whoever proposes, whatever they submit, they should be able to demonstrate that they can complete these things. I guess it will be up to you all as a board to review those proposals, look at the information they give. These are the things, like, we will expect them to be able to pitch stories, they will be able to put an email list together, they should have contacts. Each item here seemed to be the focus of our discussion at the last meeting as pertinent things that they could demonstrate that they can do.
Okay, but so no specific qualifications though, in terms of
I'm
like
sorry,
the
if you look at the qualifications at the bottom,
Right,
it's very generalized, and then they just have to submit who their key personnel and resumes for those people. We had a little bit more specific, like they would have 5 years and several municipal clients. I made this a little more abbreviated and less specific to open up the selection and candidates.
You missed a very robust conversation between Steve and Earl last time, so.
I've never seen a position where there was no like specific qualifications that somebody needed to show that they had.
Such as,
Like a college degree, for like specific years of experience in the field that they're working in or anything like that?
Well, we discussed that,
Okay,
and one of the requirements is that the respondents submit CVs for each of the people involved.
mhm,
So if we as a board decide that a college degree is a requirement, then those people who do not possess degrees will not be considered, their firms will not be considered. Likewise, if we feel that having municipal experience is a qualification, then those who don't will be voted out, just the way we did when we considered RFPs for the golf course, or for just about any of the other areas where we've asked for a request. There are certain things that, as we discussed, came out that, okay, this is what we're looking for, and we voted on it accordingly.
right, but doesn't it seem more prudent, like it's time efficient to like have our requirements listed so that we can
Well,
get those people?
To be
Just those people?
perfectly honest, one of the wealthiest men I know is a high school dropout, and he put together a newspaper business that was bought out literally twice, okay, by the same people to him, all right? One of the smartest men I know. He dropped out of high school in 10th grade. So
I see CEOs that don't have degrees
Oh,
or,
right,
but I'm just saying,
right.
like, in
So-
terms of our commission, it just
yeah,
seems to make sense to me to have qualifications.
well, the qualifications are listed here in a broad context.
Okay, if this is what you guys all decide, that's, you know.
Erin, would you like to amend the motion?
Well, if nobody else agrees, you guys have gone through the conversation before, so I don't know what was, sorry. I read the minutes, but I wasn't here for the conversation. So it just seems like you're gonna get a big pool and then you say, okay, well, we want a college degree, so and we want somebody with 5-year experience, well, why didn't we do that from the beginning? Do you know what I mean? Or do we not know what qualifications that we want for the position?
Well, just like with the golf course, the more you get, it is a lot of a burden on us to go through all those RFPs, but look what we got. We got the best, but we had to winnow through it.
Is this what, I'm assuming Brianne found like other communications RFPs for the same position on other,
And she had help from council.
okay, so were those on the original and we took them off?
The original had a little bit more specifics on as far as what our requirements were. I revised it during the past week and just made it a little more broad and less specific.
Okay. Okay.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Any more conversation? Comments? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign?
Nope.
Commissioner Wright? No. Okay. Budget discussion, number 3. Brianne.
Commissioners, in your packet on page 12 is just a letter, an overview of what I put together for tonight's discussion to discuss where we could go with our capital budget. If you look on, I went ahead and took out some of the items that you guys previously discussed, even though it hasn't been voted on, just to show you what our bottom line will be. I took out the lighting project at Spanish River, the maintenance facility design at Spanish River, the maintenance facility at DeHornley, and the restroom renovations at the south restroom at Red Reef. We added in $25,000 additional money for FAU for the rental, as we discussed last week, and then we also put in the $500,000 to reflect what we'll get from the Friends of Gumbalumbo for the funicular. So if you look at page 15, at the proposed millage rate, that, right now as the budget sits, it leaves us with a little over $11 million to spend as you guys prioritize projects next year. I do want to say that we're going to get a revised budget for Red Reef Park. When Michael and I sat down to discuss the budget, we talked about the fact that this year's budget is 8% higher than the previous year. And so I looked for a 2 to 3% budget cut from him. I was clear that I didn't want to eliminate any positions that were currently filled. I learned last week that four of the part-time positions that were being eliminated, 3 were filled, so I have asked the city to put those positions back in the budget. So we're gonna get a revised budget from them for Red Reef, which will have a little bit of an increase, but overall, we're looking at about $11 million at the proposed millage increase at 1.1956, if we left the budget as is.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, Steve?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was an unfilled position at Gumbo Limbo, a full-time position.
That's already back in.
It is already back in, okay, thank you.
Craig?
I support the budget reductions that were mentioned last week. FAU is still subject to negotiation, so hopefully it will come in lower.
I don't know if it will by the time we approve our budget, so
That's
we're
fine.
putting in the 25.
We can put it in for now, but I think, you know, it should be negotiated. It's the first email.
Well, I thought we had approved the increase in the maintenance cost, and we were looking at negotiating the CIP that they had talked about.
I thought it was a monthly, whatever the monthly, I didn't know it was split. I thought it was a monthly, and there was a question for additional.
Yeah, there was an annual figure in that MOU, correct?
Well, they wanted to do a 2% escalator, which we're not budgeting for that, we're just, for next year, it would be 25,000 more than our current.
To me, it's all subject to further discussion with them. I didn't know that, to me, what I saw was an email saying, well, it was a nice starting point, here's 2%, we'd like to do this, we'd like to do that, but it wasn't final, so I put it as, fine, increase our budget, but let's be clear, it's subject to negotiation, you know, the additional conversations need to happen.
Well, it was my intention to have that conversation, to start that conversation with you guys, Craig, but with my schedule and the athletic department. But anyway, the thought that I had, if I'm not mistaken, according to the minutes, and the way I remember it, is we agreed to that increase, whatever that number was. I don't have that in front of me, for the maintenance cost. The issue that I thought we had trouble was the CIP, because it was vague and not specific. And your concern was what would happen if we got the phase 2 of the Hornley going, and we've invested some capital over at FAU. Quite frankly, I look at that amount as tenant improvements, which is what we've made over there before. And over a 10-year term, you know, it's not unusual to request that. I did ask Ryan Alpert, who is a deputy AD, for more specifics as far as that CIP. And I told him that, you know, we're still looking to get the ILA from legal, which we have not yet gotten.
Okay.
And then we can make that decision. But as of October 1, what we're looking to do, hopefully that we'll have that in place where we can approve that and extend this agreement to another 10 years beginning October 1.
The motion was to negotiate an extension, so.
Right.
Yeah, I thought what I saw, and just going off memory, was an email that said, how about this? And it was twofold, 2% increase on everything, and then the CIP, as you mentioned. But my thought was, an email is a starting point, it's not the answer. And the direction was you participating, but I prefer Brianne lead it as the executive director of the district, and that the best negotiated solution come back and be finalized. Our budget is irrelevant for the negotiations of that discussion. I mean, it could be higher, could be lower, we will have to amend it as if needed.
I discussed this with Brianne, Craig, that I was unable to get the meeting set up.
That's okay.
With her and I just want to be clear.
Yep.
And that with the construction schedules that I see in other parts of the community, we need this extension. And the negotiations certainly can continue. but I do not believe that we're gonna get much better deal than what we've gotten on the annual maintenance cost anyway. The CIP, I think that's something we need to talk about.
That's fine.
So,
But
but
I-
I will have Bree involved in that discussion.
Yeah, but I don't want to take anything off the table until it's done. So, I mean, I did not vote on or agree to a 2% increase flat out over it. I think we spent a lot of money with FAU for the game field that we didn't get a lot for. But, you know, to me, it's all together. It's a relationship with FAU. We want to continue the partnership. I'm supportive of continuing the partnership. If that partnership comes to a higher number, so be it. But I thought it was a starting point. It was an email that is subject to negotiation. If you come back and do it in October, I'm fine with it. I don't care if it's in November. I just say it's not done.
It's gonna be, hopefully we'll have the ILA from from legal before our final budget is closed. That's my hope anyway.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
So going back to the budgetary items, I'm just saying FAU side, keep it in the budget as it is. You'll subject to finalizing it. Gumbo Limbo, I guess I have some questions for Mr. Calvert, but and the staff. It's only just prior to this meeting was I brought to my attention that the staffing had changed. And so I had some questions related to that, and maybe you know those answers, Brianne. But my understanding is there are 42 people full-time out at the combined Red Reef, which is for 21 are Gumbo Limbo, 21 are for the beach.
That's correct.
Part-time, there are 33, 11 of them are for Gumbo Limbo, 23 are for the beach.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. It happens to be -4 for next year for Gumbo Limbo on the part-time.
Right, and 3 of those positions are actually filled.
And 3 of them are filled, so in order to proceed with this, you'd have to fire 3 people.
Right, I've asked them to put them back in the budget, so we can see what that number looks like. I think that's the right thing to do. It will cut services. I mean, Michelle sent me an email earlier, we can have Michael talk, but it will cut services to school groups.
So that's where I'd like to ask Mr. Calvert to explain the staffing a little bit. So,
Good evening. Good evening, Michael Calvert, your Recreation Services Director. When we were putting the budget together, we were asked to make diligent choices, to present a budget for you all that would give you guys the money to continue on with many of your capital projects as well as many of your operational projects. I can tell you that the positions that we cut, no one was going to lose their job. We were moving people to other positions where they could still service the community and still provide very good services to Gumbo Limbo. We've had a lot of conversations here already tonight about cutting team members in tennis, aquatics, and maintenance. It's a little bit dismaying that we're having a conversation that I was not brought in on, although I'm happy to answer it, when our number one priority in the department, which is the Spanish River maintenance, has been cut for 2 years in a row and a couple years before then. So, have we looked at cutting some positions? Yes, but were we actually displacing individuals? Absolutely not. I would not do that to my team, and I would tell you if we were going to do that, I would meet with them first. So, make sure everyone understands that even though we were losing positions, just like we do in the general fund budget, we would move people to other positions.
So are these positions not needed at Gumbo Limbo? Is that what your position, is that what you're saying?
I can speak to the impact on it.
I'm going to invite Michelle Zimmer, who oversees the day-to-day operations at Gumbo Limbo, to address that.
Good evening. So I don't have the email that I sent you in front of me, but the positions that we recommended were looked at with myself and the manager, and in no way, shape, or form are they not exactly needed, but since we thought, and I obviously misunderstood what Brian had said, we thought we needed to cut some of them. So the intern position doesn't have fiscal impact if it's eliminated. We did add in a part-time exhibits assistant, so the full-time coordinator would have an assistant in lieu of the intern. So there's no revenue impact on that. The only impact would be the education of an intern, which is always, something at Gumbo Limbo that we want to do. We want to give them that experience, cataloging, seeing the history, helping the residents, and doing all the exhibits there. So if you've seen the exhibits there, they are quite impressive. As for the part-time marine turtle specialists, One would have been moved into a city-funded position, and one would have been moved to another part-time position within the department. Currently, they are down one marine sea turtle specialist. And they are making do, I would say, due to permitting and regulations. We have to have full-time staff members out on the beach. So in eliminating those positions, we would have to utilize more full-time positions out there and possibly train more volunteers, which, as you know, volunteers come and go. So you get really good ones out there and they can do the job as they do on the West Coast, but there's no guarantee that they're going to stay. So it would be a burden more on the staff to eliminate the positions. The part-time science educator position, Leanne and I did talk about that, where maybe a camp position would have been a better choice, but that impacts the camp groups. So the part-time science educator position is one where it could be eliminated, but we would be doing less school groups during the year and less camp field trips during the summer. And this year, I think Brianne has told you that we are going to be taking in the revenues for those programs. So we're going to be bringing in probably, we estimate about $50,000 to $55,000 in revenues with the camp groups, the school groups, the Turtle Watch, the hatchling releases, and all of the other revenue-based programs. So that's kind of an offset on the impact there. And I sent Brianne all that. I know you all did not get a copy of it today, but once she asked me for it and we looked at it, I gave her each thing and she came back with keep them in. So they're in, as far as we know, as of right now. But if I can answer any other questions on impacts, I'd be more than willing to do that.
Michelle, you said that the school groups are paying Gumbo Limbo to come to the center.
The school groups in the past have not paid a fee. It's been asked for a donation, and it went to the Friends of Gumbo Limbo. Some paid, some didn't, some brought $5, like for the whole class. And we put into the fees this year a staggered, like for Title I schools, it's $1 per child. For the Boca Raton and BPD area schools, it's $3 per child. And the schools can ask for a waiver if needed, and that would be on a case by case, and it might be a full waiver, it might be a sliding scale, because they also have to pay for buses, but that should be in their budget for the school. They actually ask the parents for the payments for the field trips. So in that, and then out of district, I think it was $8 per child. So they would get last dibs, if you want to say that, on the trips. But our staff, they teach to the school standards. They're teaching, and I'm gonna say, I'm looking at you guys, 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th grades to the school standards. We have full-time and part-time staff members in there that we're paying with all the supplies, doing the science programs for them. So as a group and as a leadership team, we're like, we have to recover some of the costs. It in no way recovers full costs or even 50% of the costs.
Well, I'm not worried about that. It's these children whose families may not be able to afford out of pocket to do this. I mean, and when they can't, maybe the teachers are ponying up the money for them. Is that possible?
And we've explained to the teachers that have contacted us, and they'll be explained again in September, that no field trip will be canceled. They will be coming.
Is this being applied to the exploring field trips as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Any other questions for Michelle?
I just, while we're talking and we have them up here about staff, I know we're filling some unfilled positions right now with marketing. So as we look at next year, there's gonna be a full-time marketing position and a part-time marketing position at Sugar Sand. Are these the people that will do the things like the rec reader and the cultural arts brochure? Is that who's gonna handle those things?
I would like to leave it over to them as they would have more experience. We have a very exuberant staff member at Gumbo Limbo who is doing it now.
Okay.
And that's really not her background in doing it. She's taken it on full strength. The rec reader, as you've seen it, is a little harrowing, and now we have to do it to ADA standards online. So having a dedicated marketing person, even if it's a part-time person, doing that, the cultural arts brochures, I mean, we have a lot of publications. It would be great if we could go to an app and most of it could be on there. But right now, you know, it's huge, and it would take another part-time position or a full-time position to even bring that to fruition.
So who's doing it at Gumbo Limbo now? What is their
It's,
position?
Her position is, she's a science educator.
Oh, like planning field trips and doing the rec reader?
She does less of the field trips and more of the recreator, and she does the public relations, she does the hammock happenings. Kristen Childs, she's excellent.
I know her.
It's a big job.
Craig?
So, look, thank you very much for the explanation, and to me, that's very helpful. For the budget, in order to really protect Gumbo Limbo and make sure it doesn't move around going forward, I'd like to see Gumbo Limbo's budget outside of Red Reef, not combined. I don't know if it's possible to do that.
Sure, we can give you the splits.
Yeah, but
We have it split.
going forward, we really want to keep Gumbo Limbo a special place,
Sure.
make sure it's got full funding.
Okay.
No kid cannot get into that park for whatever reason.
No one will be turned away.
So, yep, and so that we keep and foster the good things that are going on there. And so, and with that, I think both you, your team, and Michelle need to talk more about it, because their friends have a role in it too. They have the volunteer base, and so it really, today is the end of August, and I was just kind of surprised that there was a question about it, and we're putting back in money when we'd like to just, leave it be that you guys are all collectively working together nicely.
Understood.
Aaron, do you have any questions for Michelle? Steve?
I'm good.
Bob? Okay, thank you.
I wouldn't be doing my part while you guys are talking about budget. If there is a little bit more money to go around, again, I want to reiterate, the Spanish River Maintenance Complex that takes care of your park, our citizens' parks. I would love to give you all a walk through that facility. I've already given Melissa and Brianna a tour. I think I might have given one or two of the commissioners a tour. I would love to show you that facility. That is our #1 needed facility. I can't reiterate it enough.
I know I hammered home the parking meter fees, but maybe they could use the parking meter revenue over there to fund that on the city side.
And I would encourage you to go and talk with Linda Davidson, our finance director.
We're not over Spanish River Park, so I can't do that, but I'm saying maybe they would help you out there to get that done.
I will tell you that when I discussed it with city management, they do feel like it should be a 1/3, 2/3 split because of the ILA, which Mr. Horowitz talked about earlier today. It's in the budget and in the ILA to fund 1/3. So I believe that's where city council is coming from as far as funding that, whatever the amount is, $231,000 for the design. So, thank you.
Mr. Calvert, I'll take you up on both. I'll take a tour of it, as well as have the opportunity to speak with Linda. It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Me too.
Great.
Okay,
You have to take them separately.
yeah. Any more budget items that you'd like to discuss, commissioners?
The only other budget item I would like to do is that following the needs assessment, we should be prepared for whatever the results are of it. One of the things that was consistent in that needs assessment early on is that there's this bifurcation of the district and the city's websites. And so we'll wait and see what that is. I don't feel like tonight's discussion helped us get any closer together, but from a community perspective, residents really don't care. And so it needs to be one website, it needs to be defined very clearly, here's the activities, and it needs to be not the recreator turned into a PDF program. So from my perspective, we need to get started on the app version. It should be a third party who should run it, and it should get going pretty quickly because it's gonna be a big endeavor and it's gonna take time. So with that, I would like to just ask that Mr. Calvert and the team either take that project on to look for something and start searching it out. And if they can't find it to fund it together as one, we should take that role on and do that, because it's too important for the community not to know when things are going and how to do scheduling. So if you want to speak to that briefly, Michael, I apologize for taking time, but I do think it's very important. We want to be digital, and digital does not mean converting to PDF.
Commissioners, again, Michael Calvert, your Recreation Services Director. I have been one of the leaders in our field in Parks and Recreation about marketing. I taught for 7 years at the NRPA's Revenue and Development School, and I taught marketing every year I was there. One of the first things I saw when I came to the city is the need to have more dedicated marketing people. Yes, I worked for a much larger city when I was in Virginia Beach. However, their budget was 65 million. Our budget here is about 60 million. I had 9 full-time marketing people, 9. Here I have 1. So, do I want to move to an app-based system? Absolutely. Are we working with our city IT department to try to find a better online registration system? Yes, and we do have a meeting with them tomorrow. However, it seems like we can't get IT to help us get that project out the door. Even if we do get it out the door, we may not get the response back for the RFP and actually have it implemented for maybe 1 or 2 years. I would love to promise you guys that we could go ahead and start working on that. The last thing I want to do is invest in an app that works with RecTrack, when a year from now, we could potentially change our system to something that is easier for our citizens to use. RecTrack, although a good system, there is nothing out there that is what I would call quote unquote the Amazon experience, which all of us are used to. So we're going to try to find a better system out there. I have asked for additional marketing positions every year the last 2 years I've been here, both full-time and part-time. I have not been able to achieve that with my city management so far. If there's a way to work cooperatively with you all to have your assistance on some of those positions, we would definitely welcome it. Speaking to your comment, Commissioner Ernst, about having one website for the Beach and Park District in the city, absolutely. I think that the vast majority of our citizens, they don't know if they're walking into a Beach and Park District facility or a city facility. And my hope with our training program is that they get treated with the best customer service regardless of where they go. So whether it's the Swim Racket Club or Meadows Pool, it's seamless. In fact, we take a lot of our team members and they work at both facilities. So yes, there are a little bit of a difference, but we want our customer service to be just as good for both. So absolutely, I'm with you on board with the marketing materials. I would love to see our recreator get better, more towards a communication and kind of sales piece, because that's really what it is. But that's going to take a lot of work, and even though this child is very, very good, and Mr. Bogish is fantastic, and we have a great team, I'm not sure if we can accomplish it with 2 or 2.5 people. That's just the reality and honesty of it.
Where are we with the needs assessment?
We've been working very closely with Pros, our consultant, and Brianne's been with us every step of the way. I think Pros was in town a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. They gave a overview to our entire leadership team. That video was recorded and I sent it to Brianne to share with you all. Hopefully you guys will take a look at it. We're now in the process of working very closely with them to determine the survey questions which we'll ask. Over the past, I would say 3 weeks, we completed how many SWOT analyses? About 14? 15 SWOT analyses for our department. Brianne did one for the BPD, we did one for the overall city. They are utilizing that to synergize that information into helping us to determine those survey questions. Also, I'm looking at Jill. Jill, we finished the inventory and working with Carlos, correct? So one of our sub-consultants, Barth & Associates, who's based out of Gainesville as well as Atlanta, we submitted a whole lot of data to them where they're actually going through and evaluating all our parks, bike lanes, miles of walking and pedestrian trails, as well as a lot of acreage numbers.
So we're gonna have specific questions that we've submitted that we kind of need to know in terms of the BPD.
There are going to be 2 surveys which are going to be distributed to the community. They're both the exact same survey. One will be open on the website for anyone to take that survey. The other one is going to be targeted and will be a random sampling of probably anywhere between 300 and 600 members. By getting those surveys back, they will be able to come up with probably a 3 to 5% deviation that will be representative of all our citizens. And by citizens, I mean everyone within the BPD boundary. BPD and city. What we're working on now is trying to get those questions to really give us the information we need. Now, there are not a lot of changes we can make to the questions because we want to be able to benchmark ourselves against a lot of the other cities in the nation, and specifically some that are very close to us, like Carmel Clay, Indiana. We're looking at Fort Lauderdale, Cape Coral, Florida, I think Carlsbad, California. Some very similarly sized and similar recreation departments. So we just know if we're doing well or not so well.
So when do you think the needs assessment product input will be done?
The total end of the project,
When will you have deliverables?
well, I think we have deliverables as we go along. The total end of the project is probably gonna be first quarter of next year. The next step is gonna be working very closely with pros, with Brianne, with Michelle, and coming up with that survey instrument. I think we're gonna have a conversation a week from Tuesday. And then from there, hopefully they'll be able to synergize those questions, and hopefully we'll get the survey out to our citizens. I'm gonna say the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, so at the end of the first quarter next year, you'll have some deliverables? and some-
I hope that the entire project is done by then, and that would include them coming back and giving a presentation, hopefully to both City Council and the Beach and Park District Commission, maybe at a joint meeting. And from there, we'll have the concrete data, and we can really start working on what are the needs of this community, and how do we address them.
I would like that. I would just suggest that it's out of our budget cycle. That's why I was bringing it up now, that I know we need to do some work, but it's not reflected in the budget right now. So my messaging to Madam Chair is that be prepared for some changes. I think some of those changes are so important that we should be ready to fund those things. It'll be easier if it's, a third party with an actual deliverable and an actual price rather than hiring staff, but I leave it to you to give us recommendations.
Yeah, we've shared with Neelay and Pros Consulting that if they have more results, while we're putting the budget together for next year, we'll hopefully be able to implement some of that in. However, I don't necessarily want to invest a lot of money in things until it's been adopted by your board as well as City Council. So there might be certain things where we know we need to focus on communicating in a different way, or maybe we look at marketing certain programs, or maybe we know that we need to double down, let's say, on swim lessons. Those are easy things, but as far as large-scale capital projects, that I would wait on.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, I have a question. Craig, have you seen the needs assessment survey?
I have not.
Okay.
There it is. Thank you.
There it is.
Okay.
Michael, I passed along my comments to Brianne about the needs assessment survey, and I would ask that some of the things that I found that were a little concerning is that the description of the facility was not adequate enough for the individual who was completing a survey who doesn't use our facilities, and this is going to go to a broad scope of individuals, may not be able to identify the James Rutherford Community Center, or be able to comment, you just have Hatch Reef in there, but it doesn't say anything about the specific facilities there, like the splash pad they have over there, or the baseball diamonds. And the other issue is there's a statement on there regarding user fees, which the average person doesn't have a clue about non-resident versus resident. Nor there's a grid there that says, would you want the sport to the activity be funded by 100% taxes on one end of the spectrum and 0 taxes on the other end of the spectrum? I know what most people who don't participate in sports are going to check is, have no taxes go to these activities, which could affect some of the program elements that we make available to our citizens at no charge. And as I said, I passed along my comments to Brianne to ask for a little clarity in some of those questions that you have in some of the facilities, because a number of people may not recognize those facilities by the designation that you have in there.
Yeah, and again, there are some comments that I know Michelle has, some that I have. We have not talked yet with ETC. The good thing about using ETC, which is a sub-consultant of Pros, they do, and I'm not kidding, hundreds upon hundreds of these every year. I've used them at least 4 times in my career, and they are really the preeminent Parks and Recreation survey firm. So I want to share my comments with them. I know Brianne will share your comments with them. However, they're the experts, and I want to listen to them to make sure that the data that we get from the survey is easy to compare to other similar facilities, because I think that's really important when we get down to the needs assessment and how we're doing compared to other similar departments. That way we can really benchmark how we're doing.
How many other cities have a situation with a separate taxing district apart from the city taxing? How many of that? Carmel, Indiana, I don't believe has the same thing. I'm not sure about Carlsbad, California. How many of those? Are we weighing apples to apples here? To
Commissioner Ernst's comment, I think when our citizens And by citizens, I mean everyone within the BPD district. They don't know city versus BPD. I think they want a quality parks and recreation product for their family, for their children. I think they want to be able to go to wonderful parks, well-maintained playgrounds, fields that are safe to play on. The questions that you bring up, I think are germane. However, I really want to talk with ETC and get their thoughts on it. And what I would tell you is when I talked with Nilay Bhatt, our consultant last week, he said he'd be more than happy to get on a phone call with you all during one of your meetings, answer whatever questions you may have. As I was sharing with my team earlier today, it's a little bit scary the first time you're going through this process. In fact, my team 15 years ago told me everything's going to be okay, because I had a lot of questions just like you guys did, and they said let the process run. The process, I think, is running really well. In fact, I had a conversation with a fellow professional from Texas the other day. He can't believe how much we've accomplished in our needs assessment this quickly, starting it, whatever it was, 3 or 4 months ago. I mean, we've done a lot so far, so I want to make sure you guys understand. Brianne's been a great member of the panel. We are moving very quickly. However, we please need to let the process go through the process. Pros Consulting does this with dozens upon dozens of departments around the nation, both big and small, every year.
Does Brianne have access to Pros Consulting, like with
if I-
those questions and things like that?
Yeah, she talks to them.
If I could real quick, Melissa and I actually had a call with Pros and ETC last week to talk about the survey. We talked about a lot of the issues that you and I have talked about. And a lot of those things are easy things that they can change. They've already sent out an update today, late this afternoon on the survey, incorporating some of those changes. The question about taxes is not a commonly used question, so that's something that we're gonna talk about on Tuesday next week. But they're very receptive to the changes, and I've had access to them. Melissa and I had a long conversation last week with them as well. So we are all working together on it to get these things in a way that is gonna be effective for all of us, and not just, an us versus them type of thing.
Erin?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Just one further comment. I agree that we need to have, one location for people to look up all of our facilities. I don't agree to, diminish what visibility the district has in those facilities by combining that. And I want to make sure that we still distinguish the facilities that we pay for, that we have built and developed, and we currently maintain. I know recently I heard a speaker address the fact that the city was putting sports turf down at Patch Reef, which is not the case. It's the district that's funding that particular project. So I want to get good quality response to this. The quantitative part will take care of itself, but by clearing up some of these questions regarding facilities and identifying those more properly, I think we can get a better response. And to Sue's part, we've always tried to compare ourselves to other cities, but I've always had to remind, when I was on the Parks and Rec Board, this is not Plantation or Fort Lauderdale or Carmel, Indiana. It's Boca Raton, and we have a cornucopia of type of people who live here and work in the city in a retirement, a big retirement facility, city that we have. So I want to be sure, Michael, that we, as the district, maintain our identity through this process. I'm happy that we go toward one website where we identify all the recreational opportunities here, but I'm just going to insist on the fact that we do have our identity and not lose it by defining it as something differently on our webpage.
And let me tell you, I correct people all the time when they say it's a city, and I say, no, that's actually a Beach and Park District facility. I think I was correcting some people when I was at the Chamber of Commerce meeting a week or two ago. I'm not looking to diminish your identity. My point being that I think when our citizens, regardless of where they come from, come to our facilities, they want to have a safe, clean, fun experience. So whether it's the Beach and Park District or the city, I think we owe that to all our citizens. I think we're providing that both with the city and the Beach and Park District. I'm not looking to take your name off any buildings. You guys will still obviously have your signs up. But again, as a department, in looking to train our team members, we're looking to have a common customer service experience and common recreational experience.
Yeah, I guess in reading that report, it said there have been discussions about combining it under Boca Recreate, and we haven't had any such discussions, so I wanted to make sure that was clear, that we haven't reached that conclusion that was outlined in that report. And by asking that question of the public, I think that's kind of a misleading statement, and I don't know why that question was even in there.
I don't think anything has been decided yet. I will tell you that Nilay Bhatt, our consultant, interviewed, I believe, everyone sitting up on the dais, as well as our city council and mayor, as well as city management. And I'm not privy to what everyone said, nor would I want to be. But I know that there were certain themes that came in, and they're looking to do their part to find ways that we can put on better recreational programs for our entire community. Why some of the questions were asked, I can tell you when we got the second draft of it this afternoon, I think Michelle heard me say, we haven't even talked about the first draft, and now I've got to go back and compare notes. So your team with Brianne and Melissa have had far more conversations with ETC than Michelle and I have, so I'm looking forward to our conversation next week to really go through those questions all together.
Thank you.
Will we have any input other than Brianne and Melissa?
That would be a question for ETC. I know in the past when I've worked with certain city councils, ETC has always wanted them to kind of work on it without yielding to politics, but that's a question that we'll need to ask Nilay and ETC when we talk to them next week.
Well, this
I don't want to speak for them because I'm not the experts when it comes to surveying.
It's not politics, it's for the benefit of the community.
It's a question we can definitely ask them.
Thank you, Michael.
No more budget questions for me.
Okay. Any other budget items that you'd like to discuss? We have a tentative special meeting for next Monday, the 26th of August. Do you want to continue our budget discussion at that time at 5:30 in the afternoon per Mr. Engel's request?
No, I'm fine with that, and I'd like to continue.
Okay. Aaron, are you good with that? Fine. Craig?
Yeah, I'd like to go see this facility that Michael's talking about and meet Linda. See,
Okay.
that gives me time.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, good.
Okay, and I am too. So do we need a motion, Jacob, for that, or?
The meeting has previously been scheduled,
Okay.
so the answer is no.
Is there anything specific that you guys would like to see for that meeting that we have not already seen, other than the revised budget from Red Reef?
Alrighty, moving right along, Melissa, item number 4, the Swimming Racket Club maintenance building flooring. I think you have a handout, it's not in your packet, commissioners?
Good evening, Commissioners, thank you for your time this evening. Per a request from an earlier board meeting, by motion, the commission asked for us to address the flooring in the new maintenance center at the Swim and Racket Center. So we have looked at numerous different options for that. And I have worked closely with city staff to make sure this was something that they would be happy with as well. We got quotes for epoxy, we got quotes for stained concrete. I think we came to a middle of the road thinking vinyl tile was the answer. So in front of you, you have 3 quotes for vinyl tile to be installed in the maintenance facility. And I did not get the 3rd quote in, I got it verbally, but I didn't have it in writing. I will be getting it in writing, I have the other 2. But you have a summary of the 3 costs in front of you. And I'd like to take any questions.
Melissa, which area are we talking about to put the flooring down? Because there's a couple of offices over there, if I remember correctly, and then there's an area where the fertilizer and the other equipment is being stored. Are you talking about just the office space, or are you talking about the entire facility?
Just the office space and the interior conditioned area.
Okay, so
What's the square footage?
I think it was 1,700 approximately.
Well, which one is the most durable and will last the longest under?
Well, you've got, the epoxy was the most economical choice, that was a little bit less than $4,000. You would have to redo it every 3 to 5 years, recoat it. You have the stained concrete, which honestly was probably the preference of everybody, but it was $18,000. And it does, in theory, you should not have to do anything to it. It should last forever, it's concrete. And then there was the vinyl, which comes with a 10-year warranty, that was kind of middle of the road with price.
Well, with the epoxy, you said you just have to do a sealant on it, or what? How do you have to revitalize it every few years?
You'd have to reseal it.
Okay, but you don't have to epoxy it?
Not probably in the first 3 to 5 years, you would again in the future, I don't know the years, it just depends on the wear and tear out there.
It's an office.
It doesn't look, I mean, that's something for bathrooms and then kitchens, that's not, I just think it looks, that you gotta.
There is one professional office out there, the director of tennis for all of Boca does have an office in that building.
So, look, I would go with whatever they recommend that the staff wants. If it's either concrete or vinyl, that's the right thing. Epoxy is not one of the building, so it's got drywall and nice plastic edgings around it, but a rough floor, which makes no sense. So I think you wanna, they're recommending a stamp or just a concrete polish, is that what they would do?
No, it's a stamped concrete, so it gives a wood grain look to it throughout, which would be the $17,000 quote, but they were fine. Paul, as who I talked to, Paul Davidson understands that was quite expensive, so yes, he would love to have it, but he also agrees that vinyl tile is okay if that's the route you wanna go, with a 10-year warranty.
Did you look into porcelain tile?
Ceramic tile was the one that was recommended to me if we were to go forward with, porcelain tile. So yes, we did look into porcelain tile. It's in between those two quotes. The concern I had with that was chipping of the tiles. That price tag, like I mentioned, is in between the price of these vinyl floorings and the concrete stamp.
And your recommendation is to go with capital tile and carpet and tile?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Melissa other than what's pretty obvious that?
No, I would make the motion that we go with staff's recommendation with capital carpet and tile.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the quote for $11,707.20, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. Nicely done. Okay, the employee health insurance renewal, page 19 of your agenda packets. Brianne?
Commissioners, at the last meeting, you asked us to look into the healthcare savings plans, which we did. In total, if we went with that kind of plan, it would save the district about $2,000 a year for the three of us. We're happy with the plan that we have. We'd like to move forward with it this year and look at other options for next year, kind of as part of an entire comprehensive benefits package once we get the pension in place. We need this approved by August 30th in order to maintain our benefits. So tonight I'm asking you to approve $31,843.44.
Steve?
Yeah, just a quick question. Are we talking $2,000 in total savings?
In total for the entire year.
For the entire year for the entire staff?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just make a comment or two. I mean, I do enough of this health insurance to be dangerous, but I'm familiar with the HSA. There's pros and cons with this. I mean, you've got a higher deductible with the HSA, like $1,350 is your deductible, whereas under the other plan, it's a $500 deductible. Both have co-pays, co-insurance issues. I think with the current plan they're under, it's 80% co-insurance after the deductible, whereas with the HSA, it's 90% up to a certain out-of-pocket limit. You know, in my office, the very youngest employees take the HSA because they're healthy, and it's a good way to start a single retirement plan because it's pre-tax dollars that you're funding your deductible. You use that deductible to pay your doctor's visit until that's used up, and then you get into 100% coverage. I think in talking to Brianne about this program, I think it's a great program. I think that next year, in conjunction with retirement benefits that we're looking at, that we take a look at both this and other to make sure that our staff is well taken care of in this plan here that Brianne is recommending. I think will do the job for us over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Bob. Do I hear a motion to adopt this plan for $31,843.44?
I make a motion.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Just one observation, I agree with Bob's point. The $2,000 savings what I have seen from other employers who just in the network, they normally would pre-fund, they would give that $1,000 to the employee as a startup for the first year. So they have money in their account, and so then it's kind of, it's not like a drop-off. So I think it's the way a lot of healthcare plans are going. It's something to consider. We don't have enough time to evaluate it. I think you want to continue with your program, but roll it into your whole comprehensive benefit package for next year.
Yeah, and the concern I'd have also, because this is a United Health Plan,
Yep.
and Boca Hospital doesn't take that. The good news is you guys live north and probably would go to JFK or somewhere.
I was able to take advantage of it last week and I did not go to Boca, so
Yeah, okay.
it worked out.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. All in favor of, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. Okay. Mr. Ernst, we have a revised invoice sheet.
You do.
No one?
Yeah,
Got you all over it.
yes, yeah, he's got it. Well, wait a minute, let me have that one. Oh, here, a second. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion for approval of invoices and payroll for a total of $2,152,827.76.
Second.
And,
Sorry.
sorry, there's,
We need to take the 7,005 off of there for clear span structures.
yes, that's still on this one. Thank you, Brianne, for pointing it out. As further discussion, there was one item in there for $7,000, and the issue there was it was surrounding the golf course project, and it wasn't really defined. So I kind of pushed back on Brianne, asking her what that was included and how did it come about. And kind of in the spirit of the district's policy of things, my recommendation to her is that we should have some kind of motion that anything over $5,000 by the construction manager should be discussed at the board before it's approved. So one part of this is I'd like to go forward with a revised invoices, and I can give you the total number excluding the $7,005. And the second part of this is to discuss that. So with that, right now, I'd like to just remove the $7,000. The total amount for approval would be $2,145,822.76. And that's pulling out the one invoice for clear span structures until we can have further discussion around that item.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Rollins was the first to second it. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign?
No.
No? Okay. You sure right, says no?
Okay. You want to elaborate on why?
Yeah, I haven't received anything from Mr. Kosky for the $10,000, for, that we're paying him still.
Okay.
So I disagree with paying him the $10,000 again for September.
Okay. How do we want to handle that?
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Horowitz, how should we handle this?
That's really up to the board. You have a couple different options. The commissioner obviously has the right to vote against the proposal, which she's certainly done in this instance. She's asked for some further clarification from our project manager, who happens to not be here at this meeting, to offer his input. There's some provisions in his contract which define the scope and work in which he's supposed to do. That's my understanding is he's completing that, but there's not a requirement that he provide an accounting in the context of timesheets. So I would leave it up to the board as to how you want to address that particular issue.
Commissioners?
Well, let's do this, it's gonna be an ongoing invoice for the next few months. So I think that, some discussion should happen, and maybe that discussion should happen between, Brianne, Aaron, and our, council.
We're happy to play a role in that.
Just facilitate a conversation around that. If they're in it, if the answer is still no, it's no, but I think that needs to be, between the three of them, should be addressed. Any thoughts?
Okay. to address what his his role or?
Well, contractually, there's one issue there. The contractual thing from me, from a financial standpoint, is there's a $7,000 invoice. We have a bylaws that says that we should have anything over 5,000 needs to be at a board vote. I don't think our selection of the Price Fazio team is to delegate our responsibility. So I asked the question to our council, and they suggested that I provide a motion, basically a motion to direct the general counsel's office to prepare an amendment to the district's agreement with Southern Hills to establish a $5,000 threshold for engagement of sub-consultants and require that all sub-consultant engagements over $5,000 be approved by the district's board of commissioners. I think that is a prudent thing to do. That's one component of it. The second component of it is Aaron's concern really related to the construction management. And I don't know that we're going to solve that tonight, but I do think there should be some discussion around it between them.
Okay.
Now, as far as the ClearSpan structures,
I spoke with Mr. Koski today about that, and he wants to review their proposal that they have with Southern Hills right now, and he will follow up on that.
they weren't an original subcontractor, is
They were
that
not.
correct?
Not an original, but added
Okay.
thereafter.
So,
Are you making a motion?
yeah, I'm making the motion to basically direct an amendment for Southern Hills to establish a $5,000 threshold for the engagement of any sub-consultant and require that all sub-consultant engagements over $5,000 be approved by the board of directors.
Now, are these sub-consultants that were not in the original agreement?
Correct.
Okay,
Just the ones who are not in the original agreement.
okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
And if I may, just at that point, Madam Chair, Commissioners, we will reach out to the Southern Hills team, to their council, who we worked with initially when we first negotiated the underlying agreement, draft an amendment consistent with this discussion, presented for their consideration, to bring back to the board at a later date.
And Aaron, are you comfortable sitting down with Brianne and our council to discuss this matter about Mr. Koski?
Art will be there as well. He's not on the phone tonight, but I'll request that Art be there as well with Brianne and our council, and we'll be discussing a couple of other pending issues as well.
Okay, that sounds good.
One quick question, or I'll save it till, well, I mean, it's in conjunction with this. He was supposed to, from what I read in the minutes, he was supposed to submit an RFI to us for us to approve
We're gonna try calling him one more time. He's had some bad service issues where he is. We're gonna try now.
the 21st. And then this was submitted, but this was only submitted today.
Well, it hasn't been submitted to the city until we vote on it tonight. And my discussion with him was if we submit an RFI per the city's requirements, would that nullify our design with Price Fazio? And, you know, agreeing that the driving range would go on the west side, that, you know, everything would go on the west side as per the RFI. And if we did submit an RFI to their specifications, are they just going to sit there and go, well, what was all this other stuff about? So,
I'm
That-
confused. Their RFI requested the driving range be on the west side. I thought it was just
Absolutely.
18 holes.
you didn't read it?
I didn't know.
Okay, you need to read it. It's just totally against what our design is all about.
Mhm.
And it's not in the best interest of the community to have a driving range over there in view of the safety issues. So, for us to submit an RFI per their specs, it probably, this was a way to convey that we're not in agreement with their RFI. We don't have to accept it. We just have, you know, but there's a discussion that has to be done at the time of our golf course update and under discussion items. Okay? Okay, so we're up to our interim executive director report.
Okay, Michael already took care of the needs assessment update. Last Tuesday, I attended a turtle release in the morning, and I want to thank the Gumbo Limbo staff, and the Friends of Gumbo Limbo for all their efforts to protect and rehabilitate marine life and all the impacts that that has. You see all the people gathered, and it was a really positive experience, so that was great. So thank you all for what you do. That's it, we've had some rain delays out at Patrick, but we're working on that, and we'll have an update at our first meeting in September on that project. She's meeting on the 20th with them. That's where I'm at. That's it.
We come now to our golf course update. Wayne, would you like to, you and Tommy, like to give your update?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Just to go a little further on your last discussion about us, and I assume when you mean us, I assume you mean us.
Us.
We would not respond to that RFI because they want the driving range in an unsafe area. So we would not be a part of that at all. Just so you know. I think, as part of this update, obviously the city has issued an RFI, and I thought it would be pertinent to go through it and help you understand what they're asking for, how they're going to get there, or how we think that they're going to get there. And also, one of the big aspects that has been talked about from the day that they received this was the fact that they compared beer to champagne and Lexuses to Cadillacs. I have no idea what that really means, but I think what we maybe can do for you tonight is help you understand what we've actually done and where, what you will see when you see a higher end golf course, which I assume they're talking about as a Cadillac, and a lower end golf course, and so that you can visually understand the differences between the two and where we stand with the Boca National and the design that's been done for it. So the city has asked, in their RFI, can the two golf courses, driving range, clubhouse, maintenance center, and cart barn restrooms be built for under $8 million? Absolutely. There's no question that somebody, maybe several people, will respond to that and say yes, they can. I'm sure that there will have to be a lot of contingencies because they haven't done the investigation and understand the issues at hand. But it certainly can be done. And obviously the next question is how, and I think, and Tommy and Nick have looked at it, and really it begins by not doing anything new, and that's by taking the old Ocean Breeze golf course and simply renovating it in place so that you don't have to do a lot of work. Yes, you'll do a new irrigation system, you'll put drainage in, although there are some drainage problems out there that can't be rectified without elevating the land on that northwest parcel where the 9 holes is. Obviously the city seems to be contemplating only 18 holes, so that's a big diversion from what this project originally, you and this project has contemplated to be built. So with 18 holes, your maintenance facility gets smaller, your equipment needs are less, you can reduce some of the other elements, you can reduce the quality of them. But I think there's a way to get to 8 million. There's no question. Even if your maintenance is a lean-to, that'll save you $1.5 million easily. So as I said before, let's try and understand what is a Cadillac and a Lexus and a VW, I think was the other comparison made. So, sorry. So we started an iconic golf course, Augusta National. And some of this also relates to memorability and taking advantage of some of the natural features of the land. And you'll see how it comes together at the end here. But, obviously they have, this is an old nursery, very old nursery. They've got this doesn't work, but they've got a natural creek running through the property, built bridges, they've utilized, they spend a lot of money on their flowers, vegetation here. They're in a magnificent wooded area, and the maintenance of the golf course is second to none. It's, if it's 10 out of 10, it's 11. So that's what they've done in having built this golf course. They haven't had to create any waterfalls or any other features to make it special or memorable, because everything is there. Everything was inherited with that land that they have. Same thing, Pebble Beach is another iconic golf course right on the ocean. You've got, again, you've got all the natural beauty surrounding that golf course. There are no waterfalls, there's no streams, nothing has to be created, because the only thing you don't want to do with a project like this is mess it up when it's on the ocean like that. Another golf course in Cabo San Lucas, making the ultimate use of what the property gives them. Same thing here. Here, this is in Bahamas. Sorry, the photograph is not a very high quality image, but essentially, when you have that kind of natural beauty, all you need is a golf course, and let the rest of it take care of itself. Again, in the Bahamas, a golf course there. This is a golf course, again, it has its own natural beauty. It has a very sandy site. They've created these target areas. It's a fantastic golf course. I don't know if I'd like to play it every day, to be in that sand all day, but it creates a different look, and it's kind of a throwback look to the golden age of golf course design. And then moving forward to here's a golf course in Michigan on Lake Michigan. This was a fully treed site, flat site. So in order to make the golf course appear as if it was naturally always here and was a link style golf course, they removed all the trees so that you can actually enjoy the views of the lake. They created all of these mounds to make it look like a links golf course, and so differentiated it and created a look and a feel to the golf course that again differentiated it to others. That's just another picture of the same golf course. You can see a tremendous amount of dirt being moved, lots of expense. And that's how you get to your Cadillac golf course. Trump National, unbelievably huge waterfall behind the green. Again, something to differentiate the club. The cart path goes behind the waterfall. Bear in mind that this club, it's downtown West Palm Beach. You can see the jail from it. So lots of things were created on the golf course to take your eyes away from that. Because they didn't have the ocean, they didn't have vegetated forest to play in, etc. So streams that are built on golf courses, such as that. Another one. All of these added differentiating and a way to sell memberships, get people to play there, make it a more beautiful place. Another green with a waterfall in front and at the back as well. That's what I did. It was Tommy's idea. Thank goodness he didn't bring it here. But you see, the land works for it. You know, there's a significant amount of elevation change, so you can create that natural facility there. They've created a big rock outcrop with the water coming out of there. So all of these elements, here you've got these big retaining walls around there, bridges, those retaining walls again. All of these golf courses, without any of those elements, would still be good golf courses. So if you came in here and you had grass all around here, you'd still have a good golf course. But these are just things that are added to golf courses to make them something special, really special, at a significant cost, obviously. That green's been cut out of the rock. Quite spectacular. Again, making use of what the land gives them. More of the same. This is a large rock wall here to identify the fact that you can't see the creek, but there's a creek in there. So they've used that rock wall, all built by hand, very expensive, and that demarcates the creek and sets up the fairway. Again, these retaining walls along waterfall, stream, these huge. So these are where your added costs come into play. The desert, I think, working in the desert, you're clearing a lot more area, and then you're going back in and you're revegetating it at a significant cost. So I think you can see from what you've seen now, you immediately remember a lot of what you've seen. The waterfalls, the ocean, forests, flowers, etc. Out of Boca, we have condos, we have I-95. What else do we have? I think that's about it.
Train tracks.
Sorry?
Train tracks?
Train tracks, yeah. Good, thank you for that. So that's what we have. So, and I think, Tommy can certainly speak for himself, but, what they try to do here is you've got to create something there. Because to go and do what was there before, I think you lose credibility amongst people that used to play there. So you create the same golf course, and now you want to charge me more to play the same golf course, or whatever the case may be. Plus you have an opportunity here in that, let's face it, you've spent 25 million, whatever, for the land. Why wouldn't you take the opportunity now to create something, not with all the waterfalls, retaining walls, all that water, anything like that, but just to create a really good golf course? And I think you've seen, we have a significant budget a significant budget for landscaping. And so, the intent is to use landscaping as a means to create something special about the golf course. So, having looked at all of that, these are some photographs that I've pulled off the web from Boca Muni and Ocean Breeze, old pictures of old Ocean Breeze. I think this is still when Ocean Breeze was open. I think you can still see, it's just, there's nothing there. It could be a park, it could be a runway, it could be anything, and I'm not being facetious, but that's what was there before. So it's never been our intent, and I know it hasn't been yours, to rebuild something that wasn't very good to begin with. And I only say that because that was built in the 60s. So that's, I think you get an understanding of what a VW is. And maybe a VW is along the lines of a Boca Muni, an Ocean Breeze type golf course. in looking at Winter Park, I went out there, a similar thing, you can see it's pretty flat. There's not, the one thing that they do have there is they have an established tree line along pretty much all of the holes, which they're fortunate to have. It's certainly underneath the trees, that area is not maintained, it's not rebuilt, so there's some cost savings to it. And I think you know, there's another runway. There's nothing striking about the golf course. And then there's potentially what you may have at the driving range if it's kept in place. That's pretty much what you'd be looking at. And for that reason, we would have no part in something of that nature. So, as I say, it's the add-ons that create the costs in golf courses. Those golf courses that you first saw built on the ocean, they all are shaped, they are all drained, they are all irrigated, they're all shaped again, finish shaped, planted with the same grass that you use at Boca National for the most part, or in terms of costs anyway. And so why take the opportunity, why lose the opportunity to create something special at no greater cost? You know, the visual differentiators that a lot of those golf courses choose to add in are a means to create the opportunity for more memberships. It's a difficult market out there, and so they're very happy to go out there and spend that kind of money to create those golf courses. You know, same thing when you build what they call a VW, you have flat, less interesting golf courses because you have to reduce your earthworks, which is one of your major costs. So, same thing with irrigation system. Your first thought is let's reduce the irrigation, let's reduce the areas that we irrigate, and by doing that, the turf suffers ultimately. And then you begin to have problems with conditioning of the golf course. Flat golf courses typically have drainage issues because the water doesn't run, there's nowhere for it to run. And ultimately, all of these things lead to poor course conditioning. And poor course conditioning leads to the death spiral. Because when you have a golf course that's not in good condition, people will, as you know and you've seen, they get in their cars and they drive past Boca Muni and they go all the way out to Osprey. And they pay more money to play that golf course. So that nobody can argue that fact. They're doing it. You see it every single day. So as you reduce your course conditioning, so ultimately your fees have to be reduced to compete. And so that spiral begins until ultimately you're funding the golf course out of public money or whatever the case may be. So, you know, Boca National, you know, we took a, what's the word? We took a look at where Boca needed to be. And as you know, when we sat down with all of our consultants, including the National Golf Foundation, we had to understand where we were going to position this club so that it would be successful. And as you know from the NGF report, we did that to design and position it just below something similar to Deer Creek. And as I said before, there's no reason, absolutely no reason why the golf course should be dumbed down or have a worse design, so because it's a municipal golf course. The very name Muni has a really bad connotation to it. People think, well, it's a Muni, it's not in good shape, it's less of a golf course, and there's really no reason, because all of the effort that you put into designing 120 acres or 200 acres, you put into another 200 acres. It's still the same. So the effort is no less. I think, you know, to look back at this, biggest mistakes that municipalities make or cities make or whatever is that they fail to understand their environment or business. Just because a golf course is very successful in Orlando, there's no reflection that it'll be busy, that it'll be successful here. So to formalize a plan based on what somebody else is doing across the state or across the country, unless it's been studied to be a very similar demographic, and they've done all of those studies, but just based on the fact that they spend a little amount of money, doesn't mean that it's going to be successful here. You know, reducing construction costs, it's so easy. You just look at a spreadsheet and you say, you know, drop that by 10%. Let's cut that line item out. It's very easy. But what cities tend to do, unfortunately, is they get to a construction cost number. So everybody's happy with that. But in the future, when a lot of those people making that decision are gone, the superintendent, recreational staff are left maintaining those golf courses along with all the problems that weren't taken care of during construction. The other thing is they don't differentiate themselves. And that, you know, that's simply by reducing the budget. If you build it to a budget, you'll get exactly what you ask for. So if you don't differentiate yourself in some way, you're going to be competing with others in a similar boat. And believe me, all of those people compete on price. And so it won't be long and it's a race to the bottom. And then they fail to maintain the quality of course conditions, sometimes because of the decisions that they made or didn't make during the construction of the golf course. So, you know, looking at that RFI and then the city putting out a number of $8 million, let's see what we can get built for that. You know, what Tommy's done is he's gone back in and had a look at these elements. I think I mentioned these to you before. Tom, I think you want to go through this?
Sure. Can you guys hear me from here? So we reduced a little bit of the earthwork on the northwest parcel, not a ton, because we feel like we still need the lakes to create the irrigation supply, the amount of irrigation supply for the 27 holes for the 3 parcels. So this $100-something thousand reduction really reflects a little bit more earthwork reduction on the southwest parcel, none on the east parcel at all. We could eliminate the Billy bunker or the capillary concrete, which is the liner under the bunker. This is a line item that you'll pay for daily. So every time it rains, the sand comes down, you gotta call the maintenance crew in and push the sand up. So if it happens on a Friday night, you call them in on Saturday and you're paying them overtime. If it happens Saturday night, call them in Sunday morning, and this is a real, so this sort of eliminates that or puts you in a position to really lessen that. So we can certainly eliminate this. We probably would advise against that. What we wanted to do is, we all love the concrete screening cart paths. However, they are maintenance issues. So on all of the hills or slopes and around some of the tees and greens where they're going up and down or where there's a lot of water crossing, we originally proposed concrete cart paths so that you wouldn't have the ongoing maintenance issue. And so what happens to those paths are, they get potholes in them, and people start driving around them, and then they wear out the grass, and then eventually, it's usually like a $30,000 a year minimum annual expense for just the materials, because you're constantly buying them and putting them back in, but it takes staff, it takes different tractors with some different type of grading equipment to replace those. So we can eliminate that safely, but it's a trade-off. I think Commissioner Ernst said it best, all of these are trade-offs. The grassing originally was, this number is Pascalum, so that's the type of grass that's at Osprey. It's kind of what in the industry we call the Boca grass. Everybody in Boca loves the Pascalum. It's very green, and it is, the conditions that hit off of it is a little bit more favorable for higher handicap players because it's a lot more cushiony. However, we can reduce that, and this is actually a better grass for better players. It's not necessarily a bad grass for higher handicap players, but it's quite a bit cheaper. This would be Tip Tough. This is the grass that I use all the time because I don't do a lot of projects in Boca. So we could eliminate, we could reduce that, and we could, can you flip the screen? So we could save about 1.2 if we didn't do the Billy bunkers, about $1 million safely. So we come down from like a $7-something million budget to a $6-something million budget. Go ahead, John. Yeah, about that. That's for the 18 holes. What I suspect will happen with the request for information is they'll come in with like a $4 million golf course that will just basically, like Wayne said, leave the golf course exactly the way it is. They'll redo the irrigation system, they'll regrass, they'll probably have very little reshaping to do. What they won't be able to do, and what they probably don't know, and probably will not be included, is are they dealing with the old maintenance facility and the soil that's out there? Do they realize that it's going to have to be a new pump station, new electricity, new wet wells, new bathrooms, new maintenance facilities? I mean, like Wayne said, you could put a pole barn up for $500,000, you could put 2 trailers up, you could put restrooms in, and you absolutely could get it to come in, at $8 million, but essentially what are you going to get? What I don't know that they'll do is, I don't know that they'll go through permitting. I don't know that they'll be, process that we got to that number, that $7 or $6 million number is, we went to the city, we asked them what trees would have to be removed, we asked them what trees would have to be, we're assuming that the trees have to be relocated because, you can't just take them down. So I'm not sure that request for information will really be apples to apples, because when you really get into it, you really find out that, okay, well, if I have to hire a civil engineer, and then I have to redo the drainage, and I have to do the storm drains, and I have to do the parking lots, and I have to do plus, then those will probably all be extras. So they'll come in at their 8 million, who knows what they'll end up with. But ultimately, I think if you look at it, what we probably should just focus on is the delta between our 18 holes and whatever their 18 holes. And that could roughly be $2 million. So the $64,000 question is, should we look at this as a 20, 30, 40, whatever $1 million project, or should we look at it at what are you going to get for $4 million, or what are you going to get for $6 million? And to me, that's the real delta question, and the difference. This, we can get, certainly not what all of those first pictures, I think Wayne illustrated very well, I guess what they were calling the Cadillac or the Rolls Royce or the Champagne with all the creeks and all the waterfalls and all that stuff. That would be probably a $10 to $12 million golf course. That's not what we did. So we're kind of getting thrown into a category that we don't really feel like we did. We didn't try to really go out and spend all that extra money. We just really thought we would give you a really, really good golf course with contours, with really nice features, with really good shot values, something that everybody could play, everybody could enjoy. And these are the numbers. And the numbers are, if you take out whatever numbers that they have, they're going to decrease probably the scope, but I don't think that the unit prices will be much different. And so it's just you're not going to be comparing apples to apples in our opinion. Sure.
So why can't we submit the RFP with these numbers to show them that what you guys have done is what it costs?
Well, first of all, we will not do the 18 holes in the driving range.
But just leaving that out, just doing the 18 holes, show them that our 18 holes cost what you guys say it's gonna cost, so they can see that a Price Fazio golf course, 18 holes, will cost this much. We'll deal with the east side.
Right.
let
That's
him
not
see
what they
that
asked
number.
for. That was not
Well,
what the
because even at
RFI was.
six, if we're at six, let's say we come in at six, you know, you're just coming in at a budget to satisfy them that you're gonna be paying for more in the end. You know, what's your main facility then? You wanna cut it down to $1 million? I mean, I think we're at $1.5 million.
No,
$2 million, I mean, we had maintenance equipment in there, they could be leasing it. You know, so it's kind of just a shell game, you know, like where are you hiding the money kind of a thing. So what we try to do is we try to be super upfront and come in with all of the things that we think that you need so that your operating expenses would be reasonable and less. So you can switch that. And it's like, you know, Commissioner Ernst said, it's just the trade-offs. You can not put the money up front and you can spend it in the operating costs, and then you're gonna be looking like, you know, you're breaking even or you're losing money. You know, so you're just shifting if you wanna, you know, it's like just like I said with the bumpers and stuff.
Or keep it at the 7.3, you know? I'm just trying to understand. Like, okay, so they put out an RFI, so we can't submit unless we include all those things that they request, or can we submit just for the 18 holes that we have, that they have designed, right, that we approved, with the cost estimate of 7.3 without taking all those other ones out that you say are really important, showing them that our cost is 7.3 for the 18 holes, maybe they would come forward and say, okay, we'll do that. We'll do the east side. We can get the east side done straight away, like Mr. Hurd said.
Well, actually, we can't because of the irrigation. Wayne, would you explain to Aaron what the problems are there?
Yeah, the irrigation system comes from the northwest side. So you would need potentially to create your own line back to the canal and have your own pump station, all of that kind of stuff. So that would increase some of your costs for sure.
Well, I think
Well, I
you're
mean,
saying,
I'm
you're
saying
saying
if the
do the
city-
18 with the pump station and then we
Right.
do this as a separate project.
Right. Just an idea, throwing ideas out there.
With this number, the 7.3 million, is that a VW?
No, we're in the middle, in the middle of the road.
All right, it's like, I played Boca Municipal, I played Osprey, I played Trump, and the thing I do not want to replicate is a municipal golf course that, is not maintained properly. And I'm not saying Boca Municipal is not, the tees and the greens have been in good shape, and I've played them. But it's just the finish that you have and the experience that you have that you referred to earlier that I think that the public is willing to pay. Now, we've tossed out terms about describing it, whether it's a Lexus or whether it's a world class or whatever the terminology. I'd be looking for a destination golf course, one that will attract golfers like Deer Creek is, I don't know that it's been a while since I played Deer Creek, but I wouldn't want to be much less in appearance and scope than Deer Creek. And so what number do we have to get to? I mean, I don't want to throw a number out there just to appease somebody that, okay, we're going to come in under 8 million. I want a golf course that's going to be playable, and if it costs us more in the long run, but in the short run, maintenance-wise and playability is better, then that's what we should be presenting.
Right.
And I'm looking at a letter that we thought we might send to the city, and it says, Fazio cost estimate for the 18-hole construction is 10.5 million. Is that the number?
No, that's that's all of the golf. That's just the golf. On the other side, the range, the par-3 putting course, and the 18 hole.
And then also, neither of these numbers have landscaping in it. So in our original budgets, I think we had the landscape number, we were kind of commingling some of the, along the side of the golf course, some of it's also along the side of the streets, and stuff like that. So You know, I think we could be somewhere in the middle if we include landscaping, because I think we will need some landscaping, because like I said, neither of these, I don't suspect that their request for information is gonna have any landscaping on it on top of it either, so.
Yeah, well,
We're just trying to get
having
apples.
played Ocean Breeze, it had no imagination to it. It was just it was a golfing experience that, you know, I don't want to replicate. But I mean, you got your golf fix, and that was about it.
Yeah.
But if we want people to come back and play this course, I mean, an example of contrast is Boca Municipal's fees are less than Osprey, but Osprey is busier than Boca Municipal. And that tells you something right there. And whenever I talk to people in the community, they're not talking about, you know, world class or championship. They want a course that's fun to play, that's imaginative, that you have to be a little creative, and that comes from UT settings and stuff. But it has to be, you know, it has to be so Boca, in that, you know, you've got to have landscaping. It's got to look nice. You've got to. It has to be a step above what we have with Boca Municipal and maybe even Osprey.
Yeah.
So I don't want to throw out a figure that we're going to be able to do that, and then we have to come back and start adding things that bumps it up to 8-9 million. I think the bunker situation, you're spot on with that, because with the rain that we get, that sand's going to wash down there, and it's better if you have some way to retain that, so you don't have to come out there and do your.
Yeah, I mean, I think an easy trade-off would be to go ahead and use the tip tough instead of the paspalum, and then just use that number as landscaping.
You know,
Because, you know, sorry.
I like paspalum, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as a high handicapper, it's a lot easier to get off of that than it is.
It is, but it's a big budget savings if we're looking to try to save budget numbers.
Plus, you need a special golf course superintendent who knows how to manage paspalum, or it will not thrive.
Well, what are the maintenance issues, one versus the other? You know, overall cost-wise, I mean, are you going to spend more with paspalum than Tifton?
You know, there's checks and balances. The paspalum uses less fertilizer. But
More top dressing.
More top, so you're using more sand to top dress it. It's obvious it's a big, not just top dressing your greens, you're top dressing everything. So that is a significant cost. Your mowers are dulled a lot quicker with paspalum because it's a very coarse textured grass. So there are operational issues with it, and that's why, you know, for the longest time, you know, we've all discussed, you know, where do we go with the two, because we've seen the success out at Osprey. Now, you know, Osprey for the last, for a good number of years, I think about 7, 8, 9 years, they've had an individual who was, you know, he basically slept in the maintenance barn. He lived there, he loved that job. I mean, he's a little out there, but he knew the grass and he could maintain it, and he did a phenomenal job. My understanding now is that there's a transition being made there, and that they're back. And that is, as Commissioner Bowe was said, that is the trade-off, is that there's less superintendents that have the knowledge and experience of working with paspalum than there are with Bermuda. And so you know, we looked at that and we thought that in terms of what we're trying to do here, that is ultimately the most value-driven decision for the golf courses.
But just so long as, you know, we understand the trade-offs, I mean, I think that's what, as fellow Mr. Ernst said, I mean, there are trade-offs in everything we do that saves money or adds to the cost. And, you know, we want to be economical, but I don't want to reduce our costs at the expense of reducing the quality of the experience.
Right.
Steve?
It occurs to me that we already have 2 failing golf courses in Boca Raton. We have the municipal golf course, which is losing money, and we have the executive golf course at Red Reef, which is losing money. And the fees at Red Reef, correct me if I'm wrong, are dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. I was there recently on a Saturday morning, and I don't play golf, and I was only on the course. So obviously, it's not a price issue, it's an experience issue. So if we're gonna give people the same experience that they had at Red Reef or the Old Ocean Breeze or Boca Municipal, we're setting ourselves up for failure. All right, and 3, 4, 5 years down the road will be the calls, well, look, this is a money loser. Maybe we should sell the property, which defeats the whole purpose of our working on this project to begin with. So, somebody came to me and said, well, this will be golf for the people. We already have cheap golf and the people don't want it. So let's give the people what they want at the best value we can. So for example, if we substituted a cheaper grass for paspalum, we could probably get away with it and not sacrifice quality issues or maintenance issues. Because I might add, when things get tough and cities or any government agency is looking to cut costs, the first thing that goes is maintenance. All right, take a ride on the New York City subways, and there's a perfect example. All right, so why set ourselves up to repeat the same mistakes we made before instead of doing what we set out to do, which is to make a golf course, put together a golf course that's a destination that people coming into Boca for business will want to play on, that people visiting Boca and staying in one of our hotels will want to play on, that people will come to just because they want to play on this course. To put up another municipal course or another Red Reef, we're wasting our time.
Well, I think all of our emails, almost to a fault, are in favor of doing a quality golf course and not doing just a run-of-the-mill golf course. So.
And to get to my point, the reality of it is, are we really considering saving $2 million for this versus this? After you spend all this money?
Exactly.
Because that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about the delta between what they're gonna spend and what we're gonna spend. And you extrapolate all this stuff out and just look at the 2 golf courses, you're not gonna be much more than $2 million. And it's like a no-brainer.
Well, I've seen your golf courses and I want to play this one.
I think
Commissioners,
that,
do you have any other questions for Wayne and Tommy? Aaron? Greg?
Yep, so, is the plan, you're presenting this to us, are you presenting that to the district or to the city council? What's your?
So I'm happy to do that, if you want. But I mean, obviously we have, I think the RFI is an educational from what I see and what I've read in the RFI, that's an educational process for the city that they wish to go through. I don't know that we need to or want to get involved in that process. Obviously, once the information comes out, we'll certainly help in discerning what's being submitted and translate that into something we all understand.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of how we got to where we got to the whole project. What I am a little concerned about is just consistent numbers, and that, if you don't like the project, it's a $28 million project. If you like the project, it's a $20 million project, but these are all, mixing apples and oranges, and they will get their own lemons and limes together, and they'll be different. So my feeling on it is, let the city go ahead and find out what they want to find out. I respect you guys for saying, I don't want to participate in a safety design failure. And for that reason alone, I could never support whatever they come up with that puts a driving range in the middle of houses and structures. So that's a result of them either really not wanting to listen to what we've told them, or the fact that none of them are golfers. So I don't think, to me it's been a colossal waste of time. And I apologize for you and to them and that they're doing this, but that's part of the learning process. So let them go through that learning process, and then we will decide where we go. But I still believe, it'll come back to a budgetary issue and a setting of the millage rate, that we will be far better off if we're working together than we are either one party going it alone. We need the water that comes out of the northwest section. It works best with one pump system, not two. And it will be better for all of us if they could work together. And I think it's unfortunate that they're not quite at the same page we are right now. I just like to continue to eliminate the issues that are between us to get there, and hopefully we can get there.
Bob?
And that's why we have democracy. Because I agree. I would not ask you guys to participate in this RFI. How many times have you talked to the individual council members? I've seen this presentation where you're talking the add-ins and takeaways and the cost, and what number do you want to get to? And you can certainly get there, but I don't want to use that as a manner in which we develop this golf course. I want it to be a golf course that we're all proud to put our name on it and take guests out there to play. Whether it's a joint project or we do it on our own, which is my preference, because I think we've already experienced what this partnership looks like, and we've had difficulty getting a consensus on anything. And Craig's made 2 great appearances over there about the golf course. You guys have made a tremendous appearance. We have a great design. It's a matter now we're arguing about how much is it going to cost to build. And you've proven that we can build it for whatever cost you want. But we want the course, as I said previously, it's a destination golf course, one that is a step up from what we have currently. And, Boca Municipal could, with some imagination, could have been a really nice course. I mean, it's laid out where you don't have the condominiums that you do with where we are now. You don't have the railroad tracks. But it just was, over time, maintained it at a minimum to keep from losing any more money with the enterprise fund. I hope that out of this RFI, that we'll have an opportunity to identify some things in there that maybe they point out that we've overlooked. I'm open-minded about that, and I'm hopeful that you two will be able to help us sort through some of this as well. I don't know how in 3 weeks they're going to come up with something that took you gentlemen 6 or 8 months to pull together. But like Craig said, the inconsistency of reporting of the cost of the course has been a little bit of a problem for us. But understanding that it's hard to get an actual number until you actually agree upon what components you want and how you want to look.
Sure. And I think there was a point of this as well, is to, we presented the 7.325 million and Craig did in his letter and presentation to the city. So that is the number that the city has for just for the 18-hole golf course.
Right, so do we need to amend this document? Because it says here that estimate for the 18-hole golf course construction is 10.5 million.
Would you like to eliminate that or put a different number in there, Aaron?
Well, you're saying that the cost is
7.25 million.
Well, why don't we come back with the breakdown, and then you guys can figure out what part of it you want in the breakdown. We can give you the 18 holes.
I think it's easy to keep it out.
Steve has the floor.
Yeah, I think we should eliminate the number altogether, because what'll happen is the city will come back with an RFI says, well, this guy says he can build a course for 4.5 million, and we're right back where we started again. They want to compare apples and oranges, and we're trying to compare apples and apples. So I would rather do away with a specific number and just point out what we're pointing out in the letter, the components that are necessary to make this a good golf course. Because, like I said, to build another Boca Muni or to build another Red Reef executive course, we're kidding ourselves.
I agree with you, Steve. is that the only change you want to see in this letter, or do you want to make other adjustments?
For my part, outside of that, I'm good with the letter.
Craig?
I'm pretty good with what you have here, but one of the things that I was looking for that Wayne and Tommy mentioned was the landscaping. I mean, the permitting and the tree removal and relocation. I think, you know, if we were in a true partnership, they could do things, but if you're gonna be treated like everyone else coming in to do a project, you're gonna be, you know, surprised at how long it will take. So maybe something, I would just add the statement that the.
This is just pointing out the things that we would like for city council to take into consideration. So if you want to put in landscaping, we can add that.
Yeah, I think it's important that how much landscaping will be included in the entire scope of the project, and how much time and money have they reserved for permitting to occur.
Okay.
Good point.
Bob?
And would you agree that we want to take out that
Yes,
10.5 million? I think to keep things clear, we do that.
agreed. So the whole paragraph.
Remove the whole paragraph.
The last thing I would say is I'd point out, and maybe it's in here and I just overlooked it, is the safety hazard. It's unacceptable to have a driving range within the community with today's equipment. And if that's the case, describe how high the netting will be.
And
At the cost.
and what the insurance premium is gonna be.
Do you guys, with your 19 or 20 applicants, do you have a number of how many people didn't want the driving range on that side? If that's, maybe you can,
We have to look into that. yeah.
maybe that'd be, I mean, if 19 people said don't do it and one person said did it, then it'd be a
I
nightmare.
think the only people we really heard from were the folks that lived at the end of the driving range, and there's only
No, I meant the architects that did it.
architects.
Yeah.
What wasn't it overwhelmingly that most of the architects wanted the driving range out of there? I thought that was,
You know, I don't recall I think in most cases, the driving range was either put on the east, north side of it, or it was eliminated. They just
I
had
think
18
there was
holes.
a few on the
Oh,
west side.
it was all, but on the west side. There's
remember
only
it.
one with the top golf next to the expressway is what they wanted.
I thought I remembered
One.
one or two maybe putting it where it was.
Yeah, what
that was my point. If you had 17 that said no and 2 that said
I can't
yes.
remember clearly, but I remember.
Tommy, I think Brian said she'd just have to flip through the proposals, because we do still have those proposals, and maybe just make a quick review of that, where the range might be. If that's important, you think we should put that in there?
Well, I think it's worth, looking at,
Okay, here's where our conundrum is that the RFI is due on the 21st, but with all these changes, we'll have to vote on the changes as amended, but we can submit it we have a meeting next Monday, so if they get these, this information right after our meeting, then I think we would be safer with the numbers. And
I don't know that we're not submitting a proposal.
I know we're not, but we want them to consider all this information, and they will be talking about it, I believe, Tuesday of next week.
Monday.
Monday's the workshop, and Tuesday, I think they're going to have some of the presenters there.
Could we not make the changes and agree on those?
Okay.
And then, motion this in subject to those changes?
That it's an option to be approved as amended, and those changes can be incorporated. And if I may just add quickly for the record, there is a reference to the driving range and location in item F. So given this conversation, we may just want to clarify the specific concerns as it relates to danger.
Item F is the maintenance building.
I'm sorry, H.
Oh, okay.
So we can just add it in there.
We could just add some clarifying language to address the specific concern regarding the location and the proximity to the residents, which does say part of it.
Okay, so the driving range on the north side of Clinton, given the location of residence, and the safety, neighboring residences, as well as the height of the netting required.
I might want to add that, I mean, I think it's clear here when you talk about, will they suggest necessary protective measures? I mean, that's obvious that there's a problem there.
Okay.
But, you know, will they suggest necessary protective measures such as screening,
Such as netting
such as netting?
and the requisite height.
Okay.
Okay. And as far as the, we're gonna remove that one paragraph after N. And where do you want to, where should we add the landscaping? Should we make that O? So number O is, Tom, how should we word the landscaping? You're good at this.
No, I'm not. There needs to be due consideration made to the requirements that we have followed with regard to identifying, marking, and creating a plan to move and eliminate.
Regarding a plan, I like that, plan to create adequate landscaping, or would adequate be the word we want to use?
If I may, just very quickly,
Sure.
and Commissioner Wright actually pointed it out, under section I, it does reference landscaping separately. I don't know if the commission wants to just clarify that provision rather than add separate one.
Wayne, were there any issues with the city regarding the trees and locations?
Could not get to them,
Okay.
because they wouldn't meet with us until they had approved the plan.
Oh, got it.
But they did talk about
But
removing more exotics than what we proposed.
that's right, in the 18-page questionnaire that came back, I forget the lady's name that runs that division, environmental officer.
Nor,
I believe it was from her or her department saying that we had to remove all the exotics. So,
okay, so I says, will the responders consider environmental issues, including tree removals, removing of trees and other landscaping to provide enhancement to the project and removal of dead materials? Is that adequate?
So tree removals including exotics,
Does tree removal
Correct.
include the exotics,
because you
Okay.
said that was
Correct.
pretty pricey, right?
and will they all be permitted? The relocation and be permitted, and then finally, I'd say exactly how much landscaping will create the destination golf course. I think the answer they're gonna have is zero, so. or very low.
How much landscaping?
How much in quantity and dollar amount do they estimate for creating the destination golf course?
I have one quick question for Tommy
Yes, Erin.
before you go, since we haven't seen you in a while. So in your presentation, you said that we need to differentiate ourselves from the other golf courses, right? So what is gonna differentiate us from Deer Creek and Osprey?
I mean, I think the quality of design that Nick and I will provide with how we shape the golf course, what it looks like, the strategy behind it, what makes a golf course fun, what makes it challenging, and how do we make that hit our target market for each appropriate player that should be playing the right tees. So is it that same challenge for forward tee players as it would be for back tee players?
Okay, so it's mostly the design,
Yeah,
your design.
Yeah, design
Should we ask that question?
and sort of.
That's the final question.
I mean, it's a good general question that
Well,
they would wanna know, right? That's gonna,
Would you rephrase that for us, Erin?
how would they
so
design?
how is your course gonna differentiate itself from the other popular courses in the area?
That's good.
The broad question is excellent. and that's something they should be asking.
And popular is a good,
Do you think that they'll give a breakdown of all of their thing, or will they just lump sum it in?
no telling. Well, I don't think it was really differentiated.
Right, like, you know, well, obviously we're proposing USJ greens, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to save money and cut corners, and if it's just a
Exactly.
bulk $4 million or $5 million, you wouldn't know if, you know, they're doing that or not. Just a question.
Maybe that's something they'll ask when the.
Are you allowed, are any, you allowed to ask questions at that workshop of them?
Yeah,
Public comments.
Yeah, the answer is that's really up to them. A workshop is a public meeting, it's not necessarily a public hearing. So I'll confess, I don't know the city council's custom and practice as it relates to workshops, and whether they allow public comment. If they do allow public comment at workshops, then you'd have every opportunity to ask those questions.
Okay, thank you, Jacob.
You know, just the last thing you may add in there is that everything we did, we contemplated going through the normal rigmarole of dealing with the city and their requirements. And that adds significant costs, especially to buildings and infrastructure. So, again, comparing things, hopefully they understand that we didn't anticipate getting a free ride with the city.
Or South Florida Water
Sorry?
Management. And the other agencies like South Florida Water Management.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that we don't know, you know, these people responding have even looked into. I mean, obviously they dealt with this in other instances if they're experienced designers, but
You know, I think they had, some of them have had a longer time to look at this than others,
well, we know that.
you know. I think the Winter Park guys have had the jump on this whole thing, so they've certainly had more time to look at it. What they've done with it, I don't know.
And you said they're bringing in a third party to examine everything?
My understanding is that the city has hired a third party to look at our costs, and also look at general costs of municipal golf courses around the country.
Well, thank you very much, Tom and Wayne.
Thank
Good
you.
to have you here. Commissioners, with your permission, could we take a 5-minute recess to help out?
Yeah.
Do we need a motion on that, Jason?
You do not.
Okay.
Take a break, Earl. Election coming up.
Water,
Council.
but.